will probably have hella asthma attacks and die.
Look.
Really be motherfucking
Look, boy, I got the straw. I got the straw.
As fans believe that the situation between the ex-couple could not get any uglier, stunning new information has come to light suggesting that Bambi may have found love once more. Her new partner isn't just any man, which is the true twist. The most recent surprise has rocked Scrappy and has everyone buzzing online. Sources claim that he will completely annihilate Scrappy. As reports of covert meetings, mysterious social media posts, and late-night gatherings start to circulate, the level of stress is quite high. The picture that fans are creating by piecing together the clues is extremely dynamic. It seems that Scrappy, who had been trying to come to terms with their split, didn't expect this. Insiders say he is struggling to deal with the betrayal. Is there something more significant going on behind the scenes? Or is this Bambi's ultimate act of retaliation? The internet is divided, accusations are flying, and emotions are running high. How did Scrappy learn about this mysterious man? Who is he, and what will be his reaction? We're going to dissect everything, so pay attention. The internet was ablaze with speculations and speculation because of the drama, the heartbreak, and the unexpected turn that no one saw coming. For weeks, there had been rumors of Bambi's new romance, but until today, no one had concrete proof. A single grainy image was used at first, but as soon as a better one surfaced, supporters was there. When Mindy Bambi exited a glossy black SUV in front of an upscale Atlanta restaurant, she was decked out to the nines. But the towering, broad-shouldered, self-assured man beside her knew he had everyone's attention. The real story was the way he looked at Bambi, and within minutes, rumors and blogs were spreading. Since Bambi and Scrappy had recently split up, and despite their rocky relationship, she hadn't been publicly linked to anyone, many initially assumed it was simply another baseless rumor. But when additional details came to light, it became clear that there was more to the story. Fans, friends, and even people he hadn't spoken to in months gave him a screenshot of Bambi and her mystery lover. He had seen enough rumors about himself and his ex to realize that things were serious, so he initially chose to ignore it. But until this phone blew up, Scrappy had no idea what was happening. His curiosity got the better of him as the notifications kept coming in, and he clicked on one of the links. He was the man in the photo, his hands balled into fists, and his stomach fell when he saw it. His mind was racing, trying to put together prior events that now made too much sense as he peered at the screen. Had Bambi moved on before their breakup? Given that this had been happening behind his back, he looked for a logical explanation in the comments, but instead he discovered anarchy. Well, Bambi didn't take long to move on. Scrappy must be hurting right now. Damn it. That's one of Scrappy's homeboys, isn't it? He was completely stopped by that final remark. He couldn't have zoomed. He was staring at the man's face in the photo when memories suddenly flooded back, like if someone had thrown a switch. However, this wasn't just any guy. It was someone who had previously been in their presence, had paid them a visit, and whom Scrappy Head had once trusted. He had to hear this straight from Bambi herself, and Amber was like fire to him. He hit call without thinking. Bambi had another thing coming if she thought she could just move on like this, especially with him, without at least alerting him. He attempted to call again, but it went straight to voicemail. Scrappy was not the kind to divulge private information, so he clenched his mouth and clenched his teeth. He was going to learn the truth in another way, so he didn't care that Bambi wasn't picking up his phone at the moment. Just then, his phone flashed another alert, a text message from a good friend. Without hesitation, Scrappy dialed the number and saw the photographs when his friend answered. "Bro, you're not going to like this. Call me ASAP." Scrappy let out a breath. After a moment of silence, his companion replied, "It's who you think it is." Scrappy's stomach twist. Scrappy rubbed his face and mumbled no, knowing the answer before the words were ever spoken. "You have to be kidding me," he continued. "But hear me out. This isn't even new. People have been discussing this for." Scrappy's mind went blank for a second, wondering whether he had really been so blind. He shook his head and said, "Where are you at now? I'm out. But if you try to pull up, I've got some more to tell you, he said in a strained voice. Scrappy snatched up his keys right at once, and I'm sure he murmured, "I'm on my way," before he bounded out of his house. If this were true, he reasoned, Bambi would have to defend himself. As Scrappy drove through Atlanta, his mind racing and his emotions alternating between shock, anger, and disbelief, he gripped the steering wheel so tightly that his knuckles turned white. How had he not expected this? How long had Bambi been manipulating him? And worst of all, why him out of all the men in? He pulled up to a familiar spot, a small lounge where his close friend was waiting, and as soon as Scrappy got inside, he saw him sitting at a corner table, looking uneasy, and without hesitation he slid into the seat opposite him, leaned forward, and talked to me while his friend watched. The betrayal felt personal. I didn't want to say anything before because you know it wasn't my business, but after seeing those pictures, man, I knew you had done something wrong. Scrappy froze, his jaw clenched, his breathing got heavy, and for a minute he just stared at what his voice was saying. His companion nodded grimly. His friend pulled out his phone and checked his messages. Look, Scrappy read the text, his heart pounding with every word, messages from mutual acquaintances, some dating back months, talking about Bambi. Scrappy wiped his face and felt his chest tight, as if someone had just taken the wind out of him. His friend interrupted him, slamming the phone down on the table. I knew she was acting strangely toward the end, but I assumed she was just exhausted from all the fights. Getting cozy with this guy at private events, sneaking around, and meeting up at places Scrappy never would have expected made him feel sick. Then Scrappy's head snapped up and he said, "Look, man, I hate to be the one giving you all of this, but you needed to hear it, and that's not even the worst part." "What do you mean? What are you saying?" Scrappy's expression became blank. Once more, his voice was low and lethal. "Dude, he's been talking nonstop." He proceeded slowly, explaining to folks how he had bagged Bambi. How? The idea of some guys sitting around casually discussing taking his woman. No, his wife, as if it were some sort of achievement, as if Scrappy was just a simple idiot who didn't see it coming, made him grit his teeth and feel tense all over. A slow-burning rage crept up Scrappy's spine when she played you by saying that she was never truly happy with you laughing about it as if it were a joke. Scrappy hesitated before saying, "I need to see him." "You sure that's a good idea, man?" Scrappy told his friend that it wasn't going to work. He checked his phone and saw that it wasn't only him because he was downtown right now, but he looked Scrappy in the eye and said, "Don't do anything crazy." Scrappy didn't respond, but he was already staggering up. "I need to see him," Scrappy snapped. Scrappy grabbed his keys and was already on his way out of the house. When he pulled up outside the lounge where the so-called new man was supposed to be, he didn't hesitate to go inside and look around until he saw him sitting at a table, laughing and looking extremely arrogant. Downtown Atlanta was a flurry of activity, music, and the never-ending buzz of nightlife. He took a deep breath and forced himself to remain calm, not wanting to make a scene in public, but he walked over immediately, altering the mood of the room as the man's eyes darted toward him and the conversation slowed, and Scrappy saw a moment of surprise on his face before he smirked and said, "Bad mood, Scrap?" Scrappy did not blink, telling me that the tension was high and that the entire room felt the weight of what was happening. He sat back in his chair as if he was relaxed and didn't expect to see you here, and he pulled up a chair across from him. His face was indescribable, but his eyes were cold. "Do you know why I'm here?" The man shook his head and laughed. "Come on, man, we're really doing this." In an informal, almost humorous tone, the man inquired, "Are you upset with Bambi?" "Look, man, I ain't going back and forth over no woman," Scrappy said, letting out a breath and shaking his head when he tightened his jaw. "You made your decision, she made hers." Scrappy nodded and took a deep breath, but the man shrugged and said, "Yeah, I was going to tell you myself. It is what it is." The room was silent, and everyone was waiting to see what would happen next, but Scrappy studied him in this way, and his jaw tightened. He was haughty and showed no remorse, and in that moment, Scrappy realized that this was about respect and not just about Bambi. "You think this is funny?" The man smirked. "I think you took this too seriously." Scrappy's eyes darkened. A beat passed, and then all of a sudden, his fist hit the table with such force that glasses rattled, drinks spilled, and people gasped. The man winced, and it wasn't until his smirk disappeared that Scrappy touched him. But the message was, it's only the beginning. With his mind in disarray, his heart racing, and his jaw so tightly clenched that it hurt, Scrappy stormed out of the lounge and said, "Clear, you better watch yourself." His voice was dangerously low because, "I promise you, this isn't over." Scrappy got up and left, but as he entered the night, one thing was certain, this was only the beginning. Scrappy exhaled sharply, holding onto the phone as soon as he got into the car, but something told him that wasn't the move yet. He needed a plan. He didn't even need to check because the worm had already spread throughout the streets. He spoke quickly, and by the time he reached halfway down the block, he received the text confirming what he already knew. Bambi knew she had heard everything. His phone rang like clockwork as he was driving, knowing exactly what was going to happen next, and he briefly considered ignoring it and letting her sweat, wondering if he was going to pull up and really set things off. But he decided he wanted to hear her out, so he swiped to respond, "What the hell are you doing?" Bambi's voice was piercing and angry, and Scrappy emitted a, "It proves that I'm not the one to play with Bambi. Get over your stupidity, Scrap. I heard you just ran up on him at the lounge." And she snapped. What was that meant to prove? Scrappy shook his head, biting back the words he wanted to scream instead, keeping his voice calm and controlled. "I assumed that Bambi was saying that because Scrappy cut her off. No, you're the one acting crazy while running around with someone who has been bragging about you like you're just another trophy. He told me how he begs you and how you've been sneaking up on me for months in silence. And during that time, Scrappy knew the truth, and she couldn't deny it. This wasn't supposed to happen." Scrappy tightened his fist and let out a heavy breath. "So, Bambi, when were you going to tell me you want to talk about fair? I put another ring on your finger, and that's not fair. Let's talk about how you played me." Scrappy shook his head and laughed. Bambi didn't answer right away, and when she did, her voice was softer. "I didn't want to hurt you." Scrappy exhaled through his face. "I was unhappy and needed something different while you were out here sneaking around with him. Then you showed the left first, and Scrappy shot back, instead of making me look like a damn fool. Your smile gave me hope that we had a chance." When Bambi replied, "I know how you get, and I don't want you out here making problems," Scrappy narrowed his eyes and asked, "What's that supposed to mean?" "Well, congrats you did," he murmured, gripping the wheel more tightly with his nose. Bambi said carefully, "I think I know both of you, and I think this is going to get really messy." Scrappy leaned his head back against the seat, looking up at his car's already messy roof, and then he laughed slowly and dangerously. "You really think I'm afraid of that man?" His phone rang, and he saw a new message, as if Faith was validating Bambi's suspicions. "Unknown no beer yo Scrap, we got to talk. I got some info you need to know about Bambi's new man. Call me Scrappy." He scowled and stared at the message, not knowing the number, but something about it felt serious. Bambi asked Scrappy what was wrong, but he didn't answer, instead reading it again, his instincts taking over. Before Bambi could protest, Scrappy muttered, "Something wasn't right. I have to go." He stared at his phone for a few seconds before finally dialing back the number, and the call immediately came in, causing Scrappy to sit up. "Scrap, who this is? You don't know me like that." "But I know what's going on," the voice said. "If you think that man is just some regular dude, you're dead wrong. I have screenshots, voice memos, and videos with the voice saying things that will make Bambi wonder who she has been playing with. But it's not just about her, Scrap. This man is dangerous, and Scrappy's stomach is tight and dangerous." "What are you talking about, man? Let's just say that he has been playing games with people other than you. He needed to know where we met him because I mean, you're not the only person he crossed, and some people don't take that lightly. Scrappy hesitated, and every instinct in his body told him to be cautious, but he couldn't let this go if there was something else going on, if this man wasn't just a player, or if there was something more. Scrappy sat there thinking, this isn't over by a long shot, because if this guy really had evidence that there was something even dirtier behind Bambi's new man, he was going to find out, and when he did, things would never be the same. The man on the other end gave him an address, which was just a few blocks away, and he said, "Watch your back, K-I-C-K Scrappy." Once more, the same scene occurred. Scrappy was sitting outside the meeting spot in his car, his leg jumping uneasily. On the outskirts of town, it was an ancient warehouse where deals were made behind closed doors. Despite his gut telling him that this was risky, his curiosity and wrath kept him going. Scrappy paused before typing back the unfamiliar number that vibrated on his phone. Scrappy stiffened, gripping the handle of his car door as a man emerged from the alley beside the warehouse. Scrappy could sense the hurry in the man's movements as he approached, partially in the shadows, even though he had no intention of entering the setup. "You Scrappy?" inquired the man. Scrappy exited his vehicle but retained his. "Is distance asking?" The man's breath came out sharply. Scrappy folded his arms and started talking, saying, "I'm not your enemy, man. I just thought you should know who you're really dealing with." Rico pulled his phone out and started looking through his messages. This dude Bambi is messing with. He's not a clean man. He has dirt on a lot of people, and he doesn't just break hearts. He destroys lives. Scrappy widened his gaze. "Eyes, what do you mean by that?" As Rue turned the screen toward him, a series of text messages sent to different ladies by Bambi's new lover showed. "This is all part of the plan, baby. Even though she isn't even aware that I have her completely smitten. Even though Scrappy isn't really my problem, she is Scrappy's blood ram cold. She thinks she is winning, but she will lose. What on earth is happening? He has some sort of scheme going on, and she's just another pawn." Rico shook his head, saying, "He's using Bambi right now. He does this with women who have connections, money, and position. She doesn't even know the Scrappy clenching his fist as he leaves them to deal with the foul once he obtains what he needs." Rico said no. She believes she is in charge, but she isn't. Scrappy inhaled deeply and attempted to understand what he was. "Why are you telling me this?" he questioned, realizing that he had been angry with Bambi for picking a random guy over him and moving on so fast. Scrappy rubbed his hand across his face and let out a sharp exhale. "I know how this plays out, and if he doesn't step in, it's going to be really bad for her," he added, giving Rico a knowing look. "I need proof." Scrappy said, "Don't just text her something solid, something she can't ignore." Rico smirked before you did. He tapped his phone and played a recording of a man's voice. "Yes, she thinks we are solid, but she doesn't know." In a matter of seconds, he made the decision to either walk away and let Bambi learn the hard way or step in and blow this whole thing up. When Scrappy entered calmly and collectively, a storm was building behind his eyes, and Bambi looked up, surprised and irritated, and he called out, "Get that bag. I'm going." Scrappy gritted his teeth. That was all he needed. The next night, Bambi was sitting across from her new man at a fancy lounge, smiling and utterly unaware of what was about to happen. Leaning back in his chair, her new man grinned and said, "You're really pressed?" Without even acknowledging him, Scrappy pulled out his phone, tapped the screen, and let the recording play out loud. Bambi's face changed, her smile vanished, and her body tensed as she heard her man confess that he was only using her. "You're serious," she whispered, turning to face him. Bambi put her phone down on the table and recorded him in real time, saying, "Try to explain yourself again." He hesitated, and that was all the confirmation she needed. "You played me," she whispered, her voice full of betrayal, and Scrappy watched as the realization hit her like a ton of pebbles. He shifted uncomfortably next to her. "Come on, baby. You know how people misinterpret things." He had been upset with her for moving on, but now he felt sorry for her, because she didn't know what she had gotten herself into. The new man got up and glared at Scrappy, saying, "You're really bold for this man. Is this the end of it?" Scrappy grinned. "No, I think it's just getting started." The tension in the room was high, and Bambi's hands were shaking as she looked at the man she had trusted to leave me. The man muttered, "Before I do something I regret," then retreated, realizing he had already lost, and he stormed out of the lounge. Scrappy turned to go, but Bambi called out with her voice, "This time, Scrap," but he hesitated for a moment, and neither of them said anything, so Bambi swallowed hard. "Thank you." Scrappy gave her one last look before departing, possibly because fans are in shock, their emotions are running high, and the biggest question now is, will Bambi recover from this? It may not have been meant to be, but one thing was certain, he wouldn't let anyone play her that way. What a crazy turn of events. Bambi thought she had moved on when the truth came crashing down, and Scrappy was the one to reveal it. If you like the drama and don't mind, please hit the like button. Will Scrappy and Bambi find common ground after this betrayal? Or is this just the beginning of another messy chapter? Most importantly, who is this mystery man? And what else is he hiding? Please share your thoughts in the comment section below. Remember to subscribe, because I assure you that there are still more twists, scandals, and startling revelations to come throughout this journey.